What's up, BookTube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I'm bringing you a catch-up wrap-up for the months of August and September, I think. I don't think I did my August wrap-up. I'll check in a second. And then also a very quick, hopefully concise channel update. So it's been a hot minute since I made a video. Well, it's been like 6 weeks since I made a video, which is better than my absence last year. I think I took like 3 months off, and I wasn't even intending, I don't even consider it an absence. It's just like real life has been so busy. I haven't had time to do anything BookTube related. First of all, my long distance boyfriend came into town and spent a week in Washington, and we did one BookTube related activity that was supposed to be a video I was already going to make, and it was going to be for October, but I'm going to push it back and it'll be a November thing. But during that really intensive week, which was like the second week in September, I A, didn't read a whole lot, B, didn't manage to get around to doing any of the end of August, early September videos I intended to do, and I completely stopped vlogging for my my Space Opera September vlog, which I did actually record a couple of days of that before completely dropping the ball on both vlogging and also reading for that readathon, even though I was really excited to do that. You know, I mean, it's real life, personal life. I get to see him in person like once a year, so I don't think anyone can blame me for just not doing BookTube or reading. Secondly, I have work. I'm a bookseller. I work in a bookstore. It's really busy. It's been extra crazy recently because one of our managers is AFK and has been for a couple of weeks because of personal reasons. So we've all kind of just been understaffed. So it's been really stressful. And then on top of that, school started. So I'm going back to school to finish my bachelor's, and I decided to sign up for 16 credits, which is a kind of like full course load. I go to Evergreen, which, if any of you know anything about Evergreen and Washington colleges, or if you've heard of Evergreen, it's a really intensive interdisciplinary liberal arts school. And I decided to take a couple of classes on public administration and nonprofits to see if I wanted to pursue a master's in that, because they offer a master's of public administration and nonprofit, and I hate it. So it's a really heavy course load in a topic I'm uninterested in, and I'm so stressed out. So I have a ton of reading. I have almost no time for personal reading. I'm sneaking in little bits of personal reading this month when I should be reading for class. But I can't help myself. So that's kind of like channel life update. That's why I'm so behind. There's 2 book reviews I'm supposed to do. I had 3 arcs to read in September. I read 2 out of the 3. The third I just didn't get to. It ended up being another third in a series that I hadn't read the first 2 in, and so I was kind of like, oh, and they kind of approved me for it late. Like, I only had like 3 weeks to get it read, so that one I didn't get around to. And then, but the other 2, I did read 2 other books that I had approved to do, and I read one of them before the publication date and one of them a couple of days, just like a couple of days after the publication date, but I've had no time to do the reviews, and I'm not gonna have time to do it tonight either. So hopefully before the end of October I'll get around to that. One of them was really good, and I really want to talk about it because it's a new release, and I think if you watch this channel and if you like things that I like, you'll really like this collection. Anyways, I'll mention it here because this is supposed to be my wrap up. But so I need to do that. I'm doing this wrap up video. I'm not going to do a Space Opera September wrap up or anything because I really only read 2 books for it. One of them I didn't even finish in the month of September. I finished it on October like 2nd or something. And I did 2 little snippets of vlog and they were terrible. So I failed at Space Opera September. I'm really sad. I'm glad to see that Thomas is going to be doing it again next year because it sounds really fun and there's like a ton of books I want to read for it. I found a copy of Down Below Station so that to own, which was one of the books I was going to read for that. And I bought it at work, and I'm just sad. I also have to do like another book haul because working for a used bookstore means my spending is out of control. But you know what? That's not what we're here to do. I rambled plenty. Let's talk about the books that I read in August and September. I'm looking at the books I read in August, and I feel like I might have already recorded video footage of me wrapping them up, but then I never got around to editing it. But you know what? Fuck it. We're doing it again. It's not that many. The first thing I finished in August was Mansfield Park. Actually, I have a copy of it. Mansfield Park. I read maybe the first half of this in this physical format, and then I had to switch to audiobook. It was taking me so long to get through this book. I really could only compel myself to read it when I was like on break at work. So 10-minute break, 4 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week, I should say. I was not getting through this book. So I looked around. I ended up finding a really good audiobook through, was it LibriVox? I think it was LibriVox, which they're like a free audiobooks, but they're not stealing audiobooks. I need to make that clear. It's people doing free public domain audiobook recordings of books in the public domain. So Mansfield Park is obviously in the public domain, and they're volunteer created audiobooks. So I will leave a link to this one down below. I think it was excellent. The gal who did the reading was really good. She made this book bearable, but it is still far and away my least favorite Austen. I despise the romantic interest. I really don't like him. I really don't like Fanny Price. I'm sure you could make an argument about how she's a caring character, but like, she has a couple of good moments, but for the most part, she's such a doormat, and she doesn't really have like a character arc in such that she stops being a doormat at any point. She really is just a doormat from beginning to end, and she lucks out that the guy who is like forcing his attentions on her reveals himself to be complete and unspeakably terrible rake who ruins her cousin. Like, but oh, what drives me nuts is this book too is some of Austen at her like worst when it comes to moralizing, and not in a good way, not for good characteristics. There's this whole like epilogue. It's not the epilogue, it's the last chapter, where it's like, how did everyone end up after the end of the story? And it's like, it's so bad. It's like, if only the rake could have gotten with Fanny, she would have changed him. And it's such bullshit garbage, and I'm so disappointed in Austen for writing it. And I know there is elements of her moralizing in all of her books, but it is at its worst in this one, and I despise this. Throw it away. Just hate it. So there was that, but thank God for the audiobook. Oh, and did I mention I was baking cookies while filming this? So every like 10 minutes I have to turn the camera off, go run, pull them out of the oven, come back, continue. So the next thing I read in August, let's see, what was it? I guess it was Something Strange and Deadly by Susan Dennard. I'll put a picture up here. I listened to this on audiobook as well. Audiobooks, the only thing I can consistently get through right now. This was like a 2.5 star read. Completely average. The first half is better than the second half. Hate the romantic storyline. It's pretty garbage. It really goes from, I hate him, he's acting like an asshole, to suddenly uncontrollably kissing in the street under street lamps. I should say this is Susan Dennard's debut. It's steampunk zombies with necromancy, and all of those things sound so good, right? Also historic, like obviously with the steampunk element, it's a historical Philadelphia setting, and that's when I say the first half is stronger than the second half. The first half deals more with setting development, and it starts to get interesting with those elements. The characters are forgettable, but like that part was edging into interesting territory, but it's completely dropped in the second half of the novel for like the romance and the plot, it's about a young woman whose brother doesn't show up at the appointed time, and there's like a zombie outbreak, and which are fairly common in this universe. And she goes to these guys called spirit hunters, I think is what they were called. And they're folk who are in town to like fight the zombies and find the necromancer controlling the zombies. And she thinks her brother's wrapped up in it. It started out promising, and it just kind of went bleh. So I don't trust the author to make it interesting enough to continue. So I'm not going to continue with the series. I don't think it bodes well for her Truthwitch series, which I've tried to read the first one of those, and I've just never gotten into it. But we'll see. I like own Truthwitch. I got it as a free ebook. So one of these days I'll go back and try it again. But yeah, completely bland and average. The next thing I finished was another audiobook, and that is The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. This is the second book. Man, it has only been 2 months since I read that. Yikes. Okay. It feels like a lot longer that I listened to this. So second book in Susan Cooper's, I think it's actually called The Dark is Rising sequence, sequel to Oversea Understone. Oversea Understone was like one of my favorite books as a kid, and I never read the series though. So as an adult, one of my goals is kind of to reread that and then to read the rest of the books. I'm listening to them on audiobook because I like listening to middle grade, especially middle grade fantasy on audiobook. And yeah, this was fine. Not the strongest entry into the series. I think the one I'm listening to now, which is The Grey King, is stronger. And so is Greenwich in some respects. Like, The Dark is Rising is interesting because as you read it, you can see how the author is like so eloquent. Like, you can see the author working to impart things to a young audience, and it's all very deft but also obvious. So there's a lot of just speechifying in it, especially from Merriman, who, man, do I hate Merriman as an adult. He was a super, like, intriguing, mysterious figure as a kid, but man, he's just kind of a jerk, especially in The Dark is Rising. And some of the moralizing in that book, super not into. Will Stanton, though, I will say, is a good character in the series. I think he's the best character in the series, other than, like, Susan's pretty good. She's the sister from, there's two sets of, there's, like, Will in his storyline, and then there's the kids from the first book and their storylines, and they intersect in a couple of the books. But Will is definitely the much stronger, much more likable character. He's been in books 2, 3, and 4, and definitely much more likable. I think I gave it like a 3-star. It was fine. Oh, and then the next thing, I forgot I read this in August. The next thing I finished was Oathbreakers by Mercedes Lackey. I feel like I've definitely talked about this. But anyways, this was the second book. I think it's in the Vows and Honor duology. It's part of her larger Valdemar series, which is like one of her big series, I think. I just happened to pick up these two books like a buck a piece years ago, ironically at the store I now work. And I liked the way the first one was written. It was written as vignettes, and I thought that really worked well. But I hated the rape themes in that book. Hate them. This book, I really thought it was going to dodge the whole rape stuff again. It didn't. It didn't show up until like the last quarter of the book and completely ruined parts of it. Like, oh my god, I hate the way Mercedes Lackey treats her female characters and writes about rape. And like, she writes rape as this thing that completely ruins your life and kills you. And so like, there's no rape recovery. You're just done. Your life's over. Because generally in her world, if you get raped, you're also dead. And I hate it. Hate it. Or if you get raped, you become a sexless nun warrior. And it's just like the messages she's sending for like a feminist author, I think are so dated and toxic to a reader. So I think if you are sensitive to those subjects, don't read these. Just flat out do not, hard pass, avoid. And I don't know about the rest of her writing, because both of these books did it. Secondly, this second book is not written as a vignette. It's written just one overarching, it's traditional novel. It had some really boring parts. I almost DNF'd it about 70 pages in because it was so fucking boring. Yeah. Then it got interesting. The middle section is the best and the strongest and the most interesting. And then you get this fucking rape shit. And then, there's a romance in it that I hate. The book's really short. It's maybe 270 pages without the appendices, which I will touch on in a second. And there's not enough space on the page for the romance to develop the way it does. It's so unbelievable. No, hated it. The book needed like another 200 pages if she wanted to develop the romance like that. And then there were these appendices. So the second appendix is just poems, and it's like reading someone's really bad high school poetry. I literally had to nope out of it. I tried to read it because I wanted to get credit for those pages. Yeah, I know. I just wanted to pad my book stats, okay? But it was so bad, I wanted to gouge my eyes out, so I had to stop reading it after about 3 poems. Ugh. Avoid. So, I don't know if I just picked a really bad place to start with Mercedes Lackey, because some of her writing I enjoyed, but overall it was not a fun experience. I might have given this book like a 1.5 or a 2. It was pretty bad. Tell me in the comments below if there's a better place to start with Mercedes Lackey. I don't know. So many interruptions. Am I ever going to get through this? Okay, quickly moving on to the next thing. Actually, I think that was... Oh, I read one more thing in August. I did better in August than I realized. So the last thing I read in August was a smash hit, 5 stars. I read Circe by Madeline Miller. Oh my God. So I enjoyed The Song of Achilles, more or less. There's some deeply problematic stuff in it. Some problems I have with it, with the way Miller characterizes Achilles. And now I understand that we're entirely seeing Achilles through Patroclus' eyes, and so of course it's going to be rose-colored glasses, but to some extent you can see the author trying so hard to make sure that we are sympathetic to Achilles so that we get that gut-wrenching, like, emotional breakdown at the end, right? Because we all know how that story ends. So she can't make him so unlikable that it ruins that emotional aspect of the conclusion, because if you don't have the emotional aspect of the conclusion, it ruins the book, the story, right? But oh my God, it's like she's bending over backwards to like hush up what a bastard Achilles was, and I can't get over that. So it like lost some points because of that. Circe didn't have that, and I was really, really shocked. So it tells the story of Circe from her birth to, well, like after the Odyssey and kind of some of the fallout of the Odyssey. And it was so good. Like, I devoured it. I loved it. It didn't have that bending over backwards to make her character likable. Her character definitely started out less likable and became more likable as the story grew and she grew as a person. Oh my gosh. And I've forgotten his name now, but Odysseus's son from Penelope, he was Telemachus. He was so good. I had to force myself not to like go and do a refresher on like Telemachus's history because I wanted to be surprised. And boy, was I surprised, and it was so good. And her encounters with Daedalus were so interesting, and the Minotaur, it was a great take on the Minotaur and her sister, and who birthed the Minotaur. Oh, it was so good. So good. I loved it. 5 stars. Like one of the best things I have read this year. Still love it. Okay, so now we're moving on to September. I only read like 4 things in September, so let's move through these kind of quickly. The first thing I finished was The Mythic Dream. This is a multi-author anthology. I have a full review of this, so I'll just link that above. I think I like technically gave it a 3.6 stars based on like an averaging of my stars, but I feel really confident to saying it's a 4-star. It's good. If you like a blend of sci-fi and fantasy and you like myth retellings, check it out. The next thing I guess I finished, I'm really shocked this is the next thing I finished, but apparently it was, is False Horizons by C.J. Birch, I think. This is a book I got as an ARC that I need to do a review of. A review will be coming sometime in the next week, maybe, hopefully Sunday, I don't know. So I gave this like 2.5. It's an average book. I didn't know when I requested it that's the third book in a series, but I went ahead and just read it anyways. I didn't feel particularly lost. I also didn't feel particularly attached to the characters. Some of that I think would have been alleviated by reading the first 2 books. However, I don't find the 2 protagonists compelling enough. I think that I would have kept reading it. But I wasn't confused. There was nothing confusing about it. The writing was really clear. It is a sci-fi story about a generation ship that's being escorted by some other ships, and it's being sent off into the galaxy. And from what I gather, the first 2 books deal with the fact that the generation ship doesn't end up where it's supposed to. They're like lost in space. And then there is a planet, and a lot of shit happens on the planet, and like lots of close calls. The captain and the first officer, who are 2 women, fall in love with one another, and they are like sort of starting a relationship. Then there's some shit with the captain's father. He turns out he's like a renegade back in the Earth sector, and he, I think, tries to hijack their ship, and then he kidnaps the captain, and that's like where book 2 left off. So book 3 starts with their ship has been disabled, the captain has been kidnapped by her father, and the first officer is in charge and dealing with like a disabled ship. And so the captain and her father encounter one set of aliens, and the crew and the first officer encounter another set of aliens, and these 2 aliens are at war with one another. And it's just pretty by the numbers. It's not terrible. It's not it wasn't like so boring as having to I was like brute forcing my way through it. Like, it was okay, but it wasn't really, it was never shocking, and the reveal wasn't shocking. So it's just kind of an average book. I'll talk about it more in a review. I've talked about it too much as it is. Moving on. Okay, the next thing I read in September was a short story, Five for Heaven by KJ Charles. I think this might have been originally written as like a mailing list exclusive, and then, or maybe as a Patreon exclusive, and then she sent it to her mailing list. I don't remember anymore. It is like the final coda to the Magpie Lord series, which is probably one of my favorite series by KJ Charles. Still, like, second favorite after Simon Feximel, I think. It's still a comfort read. So this is the final coda. It's a letter Stephen's writing to his ex-partner from the like magic force back in London, and it's just kind of catching Esther up on like how all of their lives are going. They're no longer in China, now they're in Japan, and it's fine. I don't know. Didn't really enhance the story for me. One of 2 girl characters in the series is having a baby. Shocking. I don't know. I have nothing to say about it. And then the last thing I read in September was another audiobook. That was Greenwich by Susan Cooper. So Greenwich, Susan Cooper, I think I gave this like 3.5 stars. It's pretty good. It's really short. The audiobook's only like 4.5 hours. And it's a middle grade book. It's a sequel to The Dark is Rising. It is cool because it's like Will and the kids from the first book are brought together in Greenwich. That was pretty good. Will continues, like I said earlier in this video, Will continues to be the strongest character in the series. Greenwich wasn't terrible. It has a little bit of moralizing, but Susan gets a little bit, her name is Susan, right? Like, are all children from mid-century fantasy novel, like all female children, called Susan. What is with that? I guess it was a popular name. She has a pretty good character. She actually gets to do some stuff. She gets to do some stuff on her own. She kind of gets to like tell off her brothers a little bit. Like it wasn't bad, and the story progressed in its usual somewhat preachy manner, but it is what it is. It's such a weird series in that in some respects it's like so preachy religious, but then at the same time it's like, but this kind of religion transcends, all forms of religion on earth kind of thing. But there is just these really moralizing, like light and dark aspects that's kind of eye-rolly, that would not, I don't think, would work very well. There's no gray. There's no like exploration of gray, and that people aren't just like good or evil, which definitely tends to happen in these books. A little very oversimplified, but I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying the audiobook. I'm listening to the fourth one right now, and I do think the fourth one is one of the best ones. And I would say Oversea Understone might be the weakest one in the series so far. So, yeah, I think there's 5 books total, and I'll definitely be finishing those before the end of the year. Okay. Whew, this video was long. I need to go put more cookies in the oven. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have a couple more videos. Like I said, I've got the haul. I've got a couple reviews to do. No TBR this month because I'm honestly probably just going to end up reading mostly books for class, which is like non-fiction books about grant writing and business and nonprofits. And I if I can get through maybe 2 novels, 2 or 3 books this year, or 2 or 3 books this month, I'll be happy. So yeah, stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe here on YouTube. Thank you so much to the Bedtime Bookworm for giving me a small booktuber shout out. I remember you DMing me on Twitter, asking me about my reading tastes. I remember reading it, going, I'm gonna have to think about that and reply later. And then I completely forgot. It was probably, I'm guessing it was sometime within the crazy month that was my September / early October. I don't even know, but I do remember it, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to blow you off. I'm just terrible, and my life is crazy. So anyways, last little personal update. I will be having a sci-fi novella coming out with 9 Star Press at the end of this year, either very, very end of December, either at the very, very end of December or in early January. It features alien werewolves and sentient AI and a female-female relationship, and has a little bit of sci-fi, horror, paranormal elements. I'm super excited. It is the first in a trilogy. I really gotta read the sequel now. But yeah, look forward to that. I'll hopefully do maybe a cover reveal or like a writing Q&A if anyone's interested. I want to vlog NaNoWriMo this year because I want to do it, and I want to keep myself accountable, but that's way too much to expect from me. There's no way I could vlog every single day in November, but maybe weekly vlogs if I can do it. I don't know. Life is so crazy. I probably don't even really have time for NaNoWriMo, but at the same time, I have stuff I want to write, so we'll see. Thanks for watching. Let me know down below if you've read any of these things, you're thinking about picking them up, or if I've scared you away from them. I don't know. I'm gonna go finish baking cookies. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.